Is your HOA always this fair, paper slams? They fined me $250 for painting my house the same color as City Hall and doubled it when I quoted the law. The porch light caught their notice just as my file hit the counter stamped, filed 0317. Received, that sound, was my gavel drop, the kind that shuts binders and opens statutes. Next week, the sheriff taped a red seal on their banner, and the street that once belonged to them belonged to everyone again. They taped a $250 fine to my front door before sunrise. The paper trembled in the breeze coming off Clear Lake, catching the porch light just enough to make the ink glare back. I stood there with a mug of coffee cooling in my hand, wondering who had the nerve to show up that early with tape and authority. Across the gravel road, old Howard Brennan was already walking his dog. "Morning, Ethan. Early delivery." "Fine notice," I said, tearing the paper loose. "They're charging me for paint." He laughed. "Paint that green. That's the same shade they used on City Hall. Historic green, numbered 1897. I said, "Legal as sunrise." Howard shook his head. "Vivian loves her binders, you know that. Then she can file this one right next to them." Inside my workshop smelled of turpentine and sawdust. I set the notice down on the bench beside a labeled swatch the same color I'd used restoring half the lake houses here. On the wall above the tools hung a photo from last summer's parade, an orange and white road-closed barricade with a sticky note, "Permit pending." It used to make me smile. This morning it looked like prophecy. I flipped open the city code binder. Exterior paints. 1207. Historic finishes permitted with proof of documentation. I had that proof. I'd even helped draft the revision 2 years ago. The HOA fine wasn't just petty, it was unlawful. I called the number printed at the bottom of the notice. Clear Lake HOA came a crisp voice. "This is Ethan Grayson. You fined my property for violating Porter 1207. I have documentation from the city. Please hold." The line clicked, then another voice, calmer, colder. "Mr. Grayson, this is Vivian Carr, president of the HOA. Our color palette excludes that shade. You'll need to repaint within 24 hours. The city's code supersedes your newsletter, Vivian. Our goal is uniformity. Aesthetics preserve value." I let out a short laugh. Law preserves value. Aesthetics preserve opinions. Silence. Then a clipped tone. "Further discussion is unproductive." "Good day." The line went dead. The lake outside was still silver and flat. I looked at the notice again. Violation Harshard 1207. Below it, the HOA logo shimmered like it wanted to matter. Fine. If they wanted a fight on paper, I'd give them one. By 8:30, I was at the post office. The morning crowd was light, just 2 fishermen mailing tackle orders and the scent of percolated coffee from behind the counter. "Morning," Ethan said, Jill the clerk adjusting her glasses. "You look like a man about to file something serious." "Need an official stamp," I said, sliding over the packet paint photos, a city code printout contractor's license, and a copy of the historical palette. "Proof that I'm not repainting." Jill flipped the pages, eyebrows rising. "All this for a color. All this because someone thinks they can rewrite law with a brochure." She grinned. "You builders get poetic when angry." The stamp came down with a satisfying thud. Filed 0317. Received. I took a picture of it with my phone, then another with the green swatch beside the seal. "Evidence," I said. "Always good to keep receipts," Jill replied. Back home, the lake wind had turned colder. Howard was still outside leaning on the fence. "Any luck, city stamp," I said, holding it up. He smiled. "Vivian's gonna love that. She'll call her lawyer before she reads it." The phone rang again. Vivian. I let it buzz once before answering. "Mr. Grayson," she began, the voice already tight. "We've received your documentation. Our counsel will review by Friday. The fine says I have 24 hours. That's correct. So I'll be in violation before review. That's your choice, sir. Then I choose to stand on statute." There was a pause long enough to hear a pen tap glass. Further resistance could result in additional penalties. "You'll need a new form," I said, and ended the call. The clock ticked loud in the quiet. I slipped the stamped papers into a manila folder, wrote across the tab in pencil. Proof TR 1207. The sound of the graphite scratching the paper felt steadier than any argument. Howard appeared in the doorway again, coffee in one hand, dog leash in the other. "She's not going to quit, is she?" "No," I said. "But neither am I." He laughed softly. "You always were a stubborn craftsman. Someone's got to keep the nails straight." We stood together for a moment, watching the light crawl across the lake. The reflection of my green-gray house rippled against the water like a stubborn echo refusing to fade. I reached for a red label, pressed it along the folder spine, and wrote in block letters, "Filed, 03-17, received." Then I slid the fine behind the stamped proof, closed the cabinet drawer, and felt something settle inside me, calm but sharp. "They started this on paper," I said quietly. "I'll finish it there." Her smile said policy. My file said statute. The diner bell clanged behind me, and the heat smelled like bacon and black coffee. A line of farmers in ball caps watched the early news roll captions about a storm 2 counties over. I slid into a booth beneath the cork bulletin board Lost Dog Pancake Breakfast, a faded flyer for last year's street fair, permit pending. The grease-stained corner of it curled up like a wink. "Usual?" the waitress asked. "Make it extra coffee," I said, setting the city code FARTAR 1207 printout on the table. The page looked absurd beside a bottle of ketchup. 2 stools down, a pair of men hunched over eggs and the local Gazette. "You see that greenhouse," one said, keeping his voice soft. "HOA's after him." Always after somebody, the other murmured. "This town loves a yardstick." I sipped and printed the email draft on my phone. "To whom it may concern, per city code, FARTAR 1207. Historic green, number 1897, is a permitted finish with documentation. Attached proof and stamp." I saved it and tucked the phone away. The room hummed with forks and opinions. By 9, I pulled into the strip mall where the HOA leased a narrow office between a tanning salon and a place promising instant title loans. The blinds were half closed. The door sticker said, "Open the kind that always looks like a dare." Inside, the air smelled like toner. A framed photo on the left wall showed smiling residents lining Main Street under a banner, "Community Street Fair. Permit pending." The words shone as if someone had polished them. For a second, it felt like the photo was studying me back. Mr. Grayson Vivian said, stepping out from behind the counter in a navy blazer. "I hoped you'd come with an open mind." "I brought an open binder," I said, lifting mine. Statutes inside. A younger man with a neat beard and an HOA pin stood behind her, thumbing through a stack of forms. "Marcus," he said, "board member." I placed the city code on the counter, followed by the stamped sheet from the clerk and a color swatch. "Historic green, number 1897, I said. FARTAR 1207 allows it with documentation. Here's documentation." Vivian's smile didn't change. It just tightened like a belt. "Our bylaws adopt an updated palette to reflect contemporary standards. Your bylaws don't supersede city law. Your tone is combative, Mr. Grayson. My tone is accurate." She picked up the stamped page with a careful pinch as if the ink might rub off on her. "We appreciate you bringing material. Our council will review at the next meeting. The fine expires in 24 hours. Then you'd better start painting," she said, and set the stamp down like a gavel. "Also, because you contacted the clerk without first engaging our process, the fine is now $500. "Administrative escalation." Marcus cleared his throat. "It's in the matrix," he said softly, tapping a laminated chart. I stared at the chart. Rows of colors named after stones and birds. No law beneath them. "You doubled a fine for following the law," I said. "That's a new species of math." Vivian folded her hands. "You can appeal after compliance. That's not how appeals work," I said. "We found it keeps things orderly." I gathered my papers. "I'll see you again," I said. She smiled that binder smile. I don't doubt it. Outside, the wind had picked up. The tanning salon's sign buzzed. I sat in my truck and snapped a photo of the office window with the street fair picture visible through the glass. Then, I posted to the neighborhood group HOA doubled my fine to $500 for illegal paint color. City Code 412, 7 allows historic green, number 1897, with proof attached. Here's the stamp. Here's their office. Thoughts. The first comment landed before I pulled on to main looks like the color City Hall used. How can it be illegal? Then they tried that on my porch last year. Then a long one from someone 3 streets over. We need a real meeting with the city present. This is getting silly. The little thumbs rose like minnows when you toss bread. At the diner light, Howard crossed in front of my truck with his dog, read his phone, and shook his head at me like, "There you go." The light turned green. All afternoon, the comments multiplied. People dug up old newsletters comparing palettes like they were box scores. Somebody posted a scan of a community email from 2 years back that discouraged vintage greens. Not prohibited. Discouraged. The word might as well have been written in chalk. Dusk came in slow and gray. I made a sandwich at the kitchen counter, the house quiet except for the furnace clicking awake. Through the window, Clear Lake looked like it was holding its breath. My phone chimed the particular chime I set for the clerk's office. The subject line read, "Paint color confirmation. Received." The body was short official and exactly the sentence I'd been waiting for per 07, and attached documentation the color, historic green, number on 1897, on the Grayson residence is compliant. Record, updated. Received, 22/43. There was a PDF attached with the timestamp and the city seal. I exhaled slow. In the workshop, I printed the email and laid the page beside the original fine. The stamp sat there like a square of sun on the table. The lake wind rattled the old screen for a moment and then settled again. I took a picture of the confirmation and added it as an update to the post. Within minutes, the thread tilted. Knew it. They can't keep doing this. What's the refund policy on fake fines? Someone suggested a town hall. Someone else typed, "About time." Someone pushed back the right way. I closed the laptop and walked out to the mailbox in the dark. The gravel felt colder at night, sound sharper. Taped to the inside of the box was a narrow slip printed in red, "Hearing denied." The wind lifted it just enough to make the word "denied" blink in my porch light. I stood there for a beat listening to the faint hum of Main Street and the lake knocking against stones. Then I slid the slip free, folded it once, and carried it inside. Wrong room, wrong rules. We changed the venue. That was the first thing Claudia Ree said to me that morning at the diner. She didn't bother with a hello. She just slid into the booth across from me, a thin file already open in her hands, and gave me that look lawyers give when they know they're about to rearrange the chessboard. Outside the window, the post office was alive with small-town traffic people mailing bills, grabbing donuts, waving across the street. You could smell maple syrup and motor oil in the same breath. Inside, coffee cups clicked against ceramic, the rhythm of a town that believes in rules until they're used against it. I pushed the HOA fine and the city's stamped confirmation across the table. "They doubled it," I said. Then taped a hearing denied notice to my mailbox. Claudia flipped through the papers without reacting. "They can't deny a hearing on a matter that contradicts municipal code," she said flatly. "Bylaws can regulate lawns noise parking. They can't override city statute. You already won on paint. But they'll shift ground." "Shift, how? They'll change the argument," she said, taking a slow sip of coffee. "When people can't win by fact, they move to process. Claim you filed wrong. Claimed you're out of jurisdiction." Her pen tapped the page twice. "So, we changed the venue." I leaned forward. Meaning, she said, drawing 3 letters at the top of her legal pad, row right of way. Streets, sidewalks, public access. If they ever put up a barricade or blocked a road for their HOA events, they needed a permit from Public Works. City code, not HOA policy. My mind flashed to the framed picture in their office community street fair. Permit pending. The kind of thing they hung to prove control. "They love barricades," I muttered. "Then let's see if they had the right to love them," she said. Ask Public Works for the Row 17 permit history. Any barricades, closures, or traffic control devices under HOA sponsorship for the last 5 years. You'll probably find nothing. That's how this pattern always starts. She tore the page off the pad and slid it across the table, like a secret. Use those exact words. Row 17 permit history. The waitress came by with the coffee pot. Claudia smiled at her politely, then back at me, that lawyer smile that meant listen closely. If you find no permit, you don't have a neighborhood fight anymore, she said. You have an unauthorized road closure, and that's a county matter. You shift from their sandbox to the sheriff's. Her pen scribbled another name under the letters Row Deputy Rowan. County enforcement, she said. You won't need him yet, but keep his number. When the road becomes their stage again, he's your jurisdiction. I looked at her note at how her handwriting never shook. You make it sound like chess. It is, she said. Except one side forgets the board belongs to the state. By noon, I was at the post office counter, the same clerk from before Jill adjusting a stack of envelopes. Back again, she said, smiling. Different reason. I held up the form. Public Works Records Request. She led me to a kiosk by the wall. You can fill it online, but I'll walk it over myself if you want less mystery. I typed slowly, double-checking every line. Request, Row 17. Permit, history for HOA, barricades/closures/traffic control. 2021, present. Include insurance certificates on file. Then, on instinct, I attached a copy of the city paint confirmation, not because it was required, but because, as Claudia said, pattern matters. When I hit print, Jill pressed the official received stamp on top. The red ink bled slightly into the paper like it belonged there. I'll drop it at Public Works before lunch, she said. Appreciate it, I replied. Stamp makes it real. Outside, wind rippled the lake and carried the distant sound of a construction truck on Main. I stood there for a while watching my reflection in the post office glass, the man who'd been fined for a color now filing against a street. The call came around 2 o'clock. Mr. Grayson, a man's voice said. Public Works, I'm calling about your Row 17 request. Yes, we did a preliminary check. There are no active right-of-way permits for the Clear Lake HOA since 2021. Last approval June of that year. 1-day street fair police supervision. No renewals, no insurance certificates. Nothing since. Nothing at all. He paused. If they've been placing barricades, it's not on our books. That would be unofficial. Unofficial. The word sounded soft, but it meant violation. Can you email formal confirmation? I asked. It'll be filed and sent by close of business, he said. When the line clicked off, the workshop seemed to grow quieter around me. I leaned both hands on the bench, the cool metal steady under my palms. The paint statute on my left, the row note on my right. 2 proofs, 1 language. Paper stamped legal. The kind of truth that doesn't need to shout. At 5:17 p.m., the email came through. Subject, Row 17. Permit history. Filed. No active row permits or insurance certificates for Clear Lake HOA barricades closures since 2021. The document carried the city seal and signature. I printed it and laid it beside the paint file. 2 pieces of paper side by side aligned like tiles in a rebuilt wall. My phone buzzed once. Claudia. You got it, she asked. I did. No permits, no insurance. That's your venue, she said. If they post another barricade, it's not a violation of taste, it's obstruction of public right-of-way. Civil authority, not HOA. I could hear her smile through the line, the same calm precision as before. When they blocked that street again, she said, Don't argue. Don't yell. Just call the sheriff. Then the line went quiet, and for the first time in weeks I felt the calm of a man standing exactly where the law was written to protect him. They called it a courtesy. It read like a threat. The envelope was thick, expensive, the kind lawyers use to pretend they're being polite. I found it taped to my front door, the tape pulled tight across the wood as if the message needed restraint. Inside, under 3 paragraphs of politeness, it said what it really meant. Final notice. Lien proceedings initiated. I stood in the kitchen while the coffee maker hissed and clicked the smell of roasted beans, masking the faint metallic tang of my anger. On the workbench, the stack of HOA letters looked like an evolutionary chart of intimidation yellow, $250 white, $500, and now this one bone-colored with embossed headers and all the confidence of bad authority. Prop number 2 fractured clean through. My phone buzzed. "Howard, got your mail?" he asked, his voice carrying the dry humor of a man who's seen too many committees. "Just did. Says they're considering a lien. They're considering trouble," he said. "I saw cones by the clubhouse again. Orange one's brand new. Folks say they're closing Birch Street this weekend for some community event." "That's a road closure," I said flatly. "Without a permit," he added. "Claudia would love that." I looked at the stack of stamped documents. The city code 712-07, the row 17, filed email, the legal confirmation that had already put Vivian's confidence on paper-thin ice. I poured another cup of coffee and switched on the printer. Its hum filled the quiet like a generator before a storm. "Guess it's time I hit back in the language they understand," I said. The document started with a title line Claudia herself would have approved of cease and desist notice, unauthorized enforcement and threat of lien. Below it, I typed every citation that had kept me awake for the past 2 nights. City Code 412-07 Paint Compliance County Row Statute, Fair 41.13, Right-of-Way Enforcement, and the clause confirming all lien procedures must originate through municipal review, not association demand. I took my time formatting it. The law deserves clean margins. Halfway through page 2, my phone rang again. The caller ID said HOA office. I hit speaker. "Mr. Grayson," said Vivian Carr's voice, bright and cool. "I trust you received our courtesy notice." I did. "You should work in poetry," I said. "This is not adversarial, Mr. Grayson. We're offering a resolution. If you repaint your home within the approved palette and remit the balance due, we will rescind the lien filing. The city's already confirmed my paint complies. Our aesthetic board supersedes city staff decisions." "Not by law," I said. "Your letter borders on extortion." She sighed, paper rustling on her end. "We are merely preserving neighborhood standards. Non-compliance affects property value." "So does false filing," I said. "You might want to run your courtesy through council before mailing it again." Her tone cooled another degree. "We hope you'll choose harmony, Mr. Grayson. I'm choosing jurisdiction." The line clicked dead. The printer finished the 3rd page at the same time, spitting it out like punctuation. Howard appeared in my doorway 10 minutes later, hat in hand, coat zipped to his chin. "Vivian just posted a flyer at the bulletin board, street closed Saturday HOA parade. No city logo, no permit number. Then it's a performance," I said. "And every actor needs an audience." "I can bring a chair," he said. "You bring the coffee," I replied. The cease and desist letter was warm under my palm as I signed it, black ink catching the light. I dated it and added 2 words at the bottom in block print for record. When I fed it back through the printer for stamping, the machine hesitated for half a second before the rollers grabbed it and pressed down the word filed. Paper makes its own sound when it decides to mean something sharper final, like a lock clicking. I slipped the signed original into an envelope addressed to Clear Lake HOA, Office of Council, and another copy for Vivian Carr, President. Then 1 each for City Clerk and Public Works. By the time I finished, 4 envelopes lined the bench like soldiers ready for delivery. The printer light blinked its tired green glow. Outside, the lake darkened into ink. My reflection in the window held the same stillness as the house, steady waiting. Howard called again. "You heading to the post office tonight?" "Right now," I said, before they can say they didn't get it. The post office after dark felt like a church after service, quiet, fluorescent, and faintly humming. Jill, the clerk, was locking her till when I pushed through the door. "Late run?" she asked. "Preemptive strike," I said, sliding the envelopes across. She read the bold header on top. "Cease and desist. My favorite kind of bedtime story." "Stamp all 4, I said. City, Public Works, HOA Council and Car, personally. Her stamp thudded 4 times. Rhythmic, unhurried, received, 1942. She slid the duplicates into the outgoing slot. Copies for you always. She handed me a goldenrod receipt slip. They'll have them sorted before midnight. Appreciate it. She gave me a knowing grin. You keep making friends everywhere, Mr. Grayson. Only on paper, I said, and headed for the door. The street outside shimmered with puddles reflecting porch lights. I drove past the clubhouse. Sure enough, 3 cones stood at the curb, a roll of plastic chain half unwound beside them. The air smelled of fresh paint, probably their new authorized banner drying somewhere. At home, I set the tripod by the window angled toward Birch Street. The camera light blinked red once steady ready. Then I placed the phone beside it open to my contact list. Deputy Rowan. His name sat there like a quiet warning patient and lawful. I checked each envelope copy again, aligning corners, squaring edges. They looked neat, symmetrical, everything this fight wasn't. The house creaked once wind pressing against the siding. The smell of toner still hung in the air, mixing with coffee and lake air. I wrote a short note across the back of my copy in pencil cease and desist, mailed prior to event. Beneath it, the time, 1957. Howard texted, "They're stringing chain across Birch." "You filming?" "Yes," I replied. "Don't get too close." Then I turned off the lamp and let the printer fan die down. The hum of the machine faded into the sound of the wind off Clear Lake and the soft tick of the clock on the wall. I picked up the stamped final notice and held it beside the fresh cease and desist. The words looked at each other like mirrors from different sides of the truth. I slid both into the proof folder, pressed the clasp shut, and whispered to the quiet room, "Let's see how they like paperwork delivered by badge." At 8:03, the sawhorses went up. At 8:07, the siren chirped. Saturday morning, Birch Street was still yawning awake. The diner smelled like bacon and coffee. A couple of fishermen leaned on their trucks talking weather. I stood on the corner beside my tripod camera, blinking red, the lens aimed straight at the clubhouse where the HOA banner stretched across 2 plastic cones, "Road closed. HOA event." No city seal, no permit number. Just confidence and chain. Vivian Carr stood in front of it all, clipboard in hand, wearing that navy blazer again. Her smile was the kind that photographed well-tight, polite, rehearsed. Marcus, her board assistant, moved behind her, looping plastic chain between orange cones like he was decorating for a parade that didn't exist. Howard appeared beside me, coffee in one hand. "Told you they'd do it," he said. "I'm filming it," I said. The sound of the siren was quick, just 2 chirps, polite official like a teacher clearing his throat. A brown sheriff's SUV rolled down Main and stopped beside the barricades. The light bar flickered once, then dimmed. Deputy Rowan stepped out tall. Calm, no hurry in his stride. His badge caught the morning light. He looked at the banner, then at me, then at Vivian. "Good morning," he said evenly. Deputy Vivian greeted him smiling. "We're holding a community event, just managing traffic for safety." Rowan nodded, scanning the setup. "You have a city-issued permit for this closure." Vivian's tone stayed smooth. "The HOA manages its own streets under our bylaws. Birch is a public right-of-way," he said. "City maintained. Permit." Marcus stepped forward, holding up a laminated sheet. "Traffic plan approved by our board." Rowan accepted it, read the top line, then handed it back. "That's not a permit." Vivian blinked once. "We do this every year. Last permit on record was June 2021, Rowan said. 1-day event. Police detail present. Nothing current since then." She hesitated. "We notified residents. That's not the same as permission." A few neighbors had gathered now, drawn by curiosity or maybe the subtle magnet of confrontation. Phones came out, faces half hidden behind screens. Vivian lifted her chin. "We're simply ensuring order." Rowan folded his hands behind his back. "You don't ensure order by blocking a public road without authorization." His tone didn't rise. It didn't have to. Howard muttered, "Sounds like he read Claudia's memo." Vivian tried again. "Deputy, These cones are temporary, just a few hours. Surely you can understand that—" He cut her off gently. "I understand you need a right-of-way permit. Until you have one, this closure is unauthorized." She turned toward me. "Did you call him?" "I called the law," I said. Her eyes narrowed. "You've made this very public, Mr. Grayson. That's the point I said." Rowan opened his vehicle door, retrieved a clipboard encased in hard plastic, and flipped it open. The form beneath read "Closure Order, City of Clear Lake" in bold letters. I zoomed the camera in as he uncapped his pen. He pressed the red filed stamp at the bottom hard enough for everyone to hear it. Then he signed his name, slid the order into a clear sleeve, and taped it right over the HOA's vinyl banner. The new heading glared in the sunlight, closed by Order City of Clear Lake, and underneath a handwritten note, "Open until valid permit issued." The crowd murmured. Someone clapped once, then stopped. Vivian's mouth twitched. "You're embarrassing this community, Deputy." "No, ma'am," Rowan said. "I'm protecting it. This street belongs to everyone." Marcus looked at the plastic chain in his hands like it had suddenly turned into evidence. He dropped it onto the sidewalk with a dull clatter. Vivian forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll appeal." "Appeal's fine," Rowan said. "Start at City Hall." He turned to the nearest barricade, lifted it with one hand, and moved it gently aside. The motion was simple, quiet, final. The street exhaled. Cars idled forward. A kid on a scooter rolled through the open lane laughing as if he'd just crossed into freedom. Rowan faced Vivian one last time. "For the record, ma'am, unauthorized traffic control devices are subject to removal under HOA 17. "I'll file this notice." Her voice faltered. "You'll hear from our attorney." He gave a small nod. "They usually say that." Howard leaned toward me. "That's a man who's cleaned up this mess before." Rowan started back toward his SUV. I called out, "Deputy, thank you for coming." He nodded once, professional. "Just doing the job. Roads are meant to stay open." He climbed in, lights off, now radio, murmuring something low. The SUV rolled away, leaving behind the open street the red seal drying under the weak sun. Vivian stood there, frozen clipboard to her chest, surrounded by silence that had turned heavy. The neighbors lingered on the sidewalks, whispering. One man near the diner said at first not loud, but certain. Finally, someone fought back. The words rippled through the small crowd like a quiet verdict. Howard finished his coffee, watching her turn away. "Guess paperwork cuts both ways," he said. I kept the camera rolling a few seconds longer, just enough to capture the order's red stamp, the banner flapping loose, and Vivian's face tightening under the morning light. Then I whispered to the lens, calm and steady. "Justice doesn't shout. It signs in ink." And I pressed stop. We brought statutes. They brought stories. That was Claudia's line as we walked into City Hall, and it stayed true all the way through. The room looked smaller than I imagined, pale walls, a row of folding chairs, a projector trembling in the corner. The city seal hung crooked above the dais where 3 panel members sat, and the middle one, Chairwoman Delaney, already flipping through her folder. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, turning paper into mirrors. I sat at the left table beside Claudia Rhee, our mentor and counsel calm in a charcoal blazer. Across the aisle sat Vivian Carr and her board, Marcus and 2 others whispering fast behind a stack of glossy HOA bylaws. The banner from the street closure sat rolled at their feet like an artifact of arrogance. A clerk pressed a button. The recorder on the desk blinked red hearing transcript. Paint Code Appeal. The timestamp rolled 09:01 a.m. Case number 24107. The clerk read, Ethan Grayson versus Clear Lake Homeowners Association. The gavel tapped once. The sound cracked like a cold branch. Chairwoman Delaney nodded to Claudia. "You may proceed." Claudia rose, steady as a metronome. "Madam Chair, we submit for the record the following exhibits: 1 City Paint Code, 412-07, confirming compliance of Mr. Grayson's residence. 2 Row 17 records indicating no authorized permit for HOA street closures since 2021, and 3 a cease and desist notice served prior to the HOA's unauthorized event." She handed the clerk a folder stamped Filed 0317, Received. The papers slid across the table with the confidence of truth. Vivian didn't look up. Her smile had returned brittle this time. Chairwoman Delaney gestured toward the opposite table. Response. Vivian stood smoothing her blazer. Madam Chair, our intention was never punitive. The association merely sought to maintain visual harmony in the community. Our volunteer board acts on behalf of dozens of residents, many concerned about declining standards. So, you issued a fine? Delaney asked. Vivian nodded. Yes, under bylaw, Article 7A, color uniformity. And you threatened a lien. It was procedural, Vivian said quickly. A standard letter. Claudia leaned toward the mic. A threat of lien without authority isn't procedural. It's unlawful. Delaney raised an eyebrow. Did you verify city code before issuing that letter? Vivian hesitated. Our bylaws were drafted with legal counsel years ago. That wasn't the question, Delaney said. The air in the room turned heavier. Even the hum of the fluorescent tubes seemed to pause. Vivian shuffled papers. We believed at the time that we had jurisdiction. Claudia slid a printed email across the table. This, Madam Chair, is confirmation from the city clerk's office dated April 14th, 22-43. It clearly states Mr. Grayson's paint color is within municipal compliance. Received before the HOA escalated fines. Delaney read it, expression unreadable. Noted. Proceed. Claudia tapped another folder. This Exhibit D is the sheriff's closure order signed and stamped under HOA Row 17. It overrides the HOA barricade posted the same day. The projector flickered on cue, showing the photograph the red-stamped city of Clear Lake. Closed. Open until permit issued. A low murmur ran through the audience. Vivian's lawyer tried to object. Irrelevant to paint enforcement, Delaney lifted a hand. It speaks to overreach. Overruled. I watched Vivian's jaw tighten. Marcus stared straight ahead, color draining from his face. Claudia glanced at me, her cue silent but clear. I reached into my folder and pulled out the original yellow violation notice. Paint code FR11207. The paper had faded corners soft from handling. I placed it on the evidence tray. Madam Chair. I said, keeping my voice low but steady. This was taped to my front door before sunrise. No hearing, no courtesy. I called City Code Enforcement that morning. They confirmed compliance within 20 minutes. Delaney studied the paper, then looked up. You documented every step. Yes, ma'am. Filed and time-stamped. A small smile flickered across her face. You'd make a fine clerk? Across the room, Vivian's pen tapped once fast like a nervous tell. Delaney turned to her. Ms. Carr, this panel finds that your board acted outside the scope of your charter. The city, not the HOA, determines code compliance. The attempted lien and unauthorized street closure constitute procedural abuse. Accordingly, she raised the gavel. The sound it made when it struck the block was clean, sharp final. The fine is reversed, and this committee issues a formal censure against the Clear Lake Homeowners Association. The words fell like a verdict and an exhale at once. For a second, no one moved. Then Claudia smiled, small controlled the kind lawyers reserve for honest victories. She leaned toward me. Justice recorded, she whispered. Not shouted. Outside, the hallway buzzed with reporters and residents. Microphones appeared. Flashbulbs popped. Someone asked Vivian for a statement. She didn't answer. Her face was a locked door as she brushed past heels striking the tile too hard. One of the clerks caught my eye lifting a folder marked Hearing Transcript. Filed 10:47 a.m. She smiled faintly. For your records, Mr. Grayson. I took it, the weight cool and reassuring in my hand. Howard met us on the steps with 2 coffees. You win, Claudia answered for me. On paper and where it counts. He grinned. That's how revolutions stay civilized. The camera crew outside filmed the courthouse doors closing behind Vivian Carr, silent in defeat. For once, silence sounded like law. They pulled the smoker across the grass just before sunset, wheels bumping over roots, the lid coughing out a ribbon of hickory that smelled like apologies might work if you let them. Kids chased each other around the picnic tables. Someone tuned a guitar and stopped after 2 chords as if music needed permission, same as roads. Taking down fines was easy. Fixing trust wasn't. I set a folding table by the water and laid out napkins, paper plates, a legal pad, and a pen. The lake made its low evening sound against the rocks, a slow note that kept people honest. Across the yard, Howard stirred a pan of beans like a man auditioning for quiet. When he saw me, he tipped his spoon in a greeting that meant, try to be kind. Marcus and Linda crossed the lawn together, not leading anything, just arriving. Marcus had ditched the clipboard for a casserole. Linda carried a stack of blank forms pinned with a binder clip like a promise. They both looked lighter and older at the same time. "Hi, Ethan," Linda said. "Thanks for hosting." "It's a lake," I said. "It hosts itself. We just try not to get in the way." She smiled at that, a real one. Marcus shifted on his feet. "We asked folks to come as neighbors," he said, "not as members. That seemed important." "Important is good," I said. "Precise is better." A county SUV rolled up and eased into the shade. Deputy Rowan stepped out with a soft slam and a manila envelope under his arm. He didn't wear the hat tonight. He didn't need it. The badge was enough, and the way he stood made the air feel squared. "Evening," he said. "I brought what we talked about." "Hope you're hungry," Howard called from the smoker. "I am," Rowan said. "But let's sign first. Food tastes better when the paper's straight." He set the envelope on my table and slid out a draft, 9 pages, crisp and patient. Street use. Memorandum of agreement. A red sticky tab marked the signature line. The top paragraph read like Medicine City governs right-of-way. County enforces. Association may request closures by submitting permits through Public Works. No barricades, chains, or traffic diversions without posted order. Terms clean enough for anyone to read without a lawyer. Linda traced a line with one finger. "Transparent calendar," she asked. Public Rowan said. "Link on the city site. Any resident can check status, submitted pending approved posted. No surprises." "And complaints," Marcus said. Rowan tapped a box near the bottom. "Network channel to route them straight to Public Works. HOA gets copies, not control. You guide volunteers. City guides streets." Marcus nodded slowly. "That would have saved us from ourselves." I felt my shoulders drop a fraction, and leans. Claudia's voice answered before Rowan could. She stepped from the shade companion to precision as always, jacket hung over one shoulder. "No lean language in HOA notices unless the city first establishes code violation and due process is posted," she said. "Any future letter with that word rides with a citation number and a clerk's stamp, or it stays in the drafts folder forever." Linda met her eyes. "Agreed." Rowan slid the pen to me. "Owner's signature makes it more than a memo," he said. "It makes it memory." People gathered in a loose half-circle, plates in hand, curiosity out in the open. I looked past the paper to the lake to the old dock post where a members-only sign had once tried to make truth out of aluminum. "Some fights you win with a stamp. The ones that matter you hold on to with a rule everyone can see." I signed. Rowan dated the margin, printed his name, and added a second sheet, Public Posting Protocol. A 1-page checklist for barricades, cones, spotters, and the sentence that mattered to me most. No device may impede normal traffic without posted order from the city. Volunteers shall remain off the travel lane unless escorted by officer or flagger certified through Public Works. It sounded like small print. It read like a boundary. Linda signed for the board, then Marcus. His pen hovered for a beat over his name. "We're sorry," he said. "It wasn't a performance. It wasn't loud. We let habit outrun authority. Habits do that," I said. "So do people." Howard clapped one spoon still in his hand. The sound broke the circle, the way a cheer breaks tension without getting greedy. Plates found brisket. Sauce found shirts. The guitar tried a third chord and this time kept going. Rowan unfolded a single-page resignation acknowledgement and placed it on the table without flourish. Vivian's name sat there in precise ink effective immediately. No statement, no defense, just absence formalized. Was it her idea? I asked. Doesn't matter, Rowan said. What matters is the course correction is on paper and on purpose. He nodded toward the kids chasing each other by the shoreline. The rest is just weather. Marcus raised a clear plastic cup. To doing it right, he said. No one whooped. They didn't have to. Cups went up and we all drank like we were cooling something that had burned too long. Claudia touched my elbow. You did the hard thing, she said. You stayed boring when it wanted a fight. Is that a compliment? I asked. It's survival, she said, and drifted toward the potato salad. Neighbors drifted too, people who had muttered about my paint now asking about my deck stain. A man I barely knew pressed a folded 20 into the donation jar for the park bench fund and walked away before anyone thanked him. Linda took the blank forms and began writing event request. Draft at the top of each, handing them to committee chairs like someone passing out clean slates. I tucked our signed pages into a clear sleeve and held it up until the porch light found it. The seal flashed. The lines looked firm enough to lean on. Howard came to stand beside me carrying 2 plates balanced in one hand. He watched Rowan show a kid how to tie plastic flagging to a stake without strangling the grass. He watched Marcus throw away the knot of yellow chain that had tried to be a border. He watched Linda pin the MOA summary to the bulletin board with thumbtacks that didn't shake. Listen, Howard said. At first, all I heard was the buzz of the yard, the cough of the smoker, the guitar, the water on rock. Then the words slipped out of the hum, not loud, not for the camera, just for the center of the night. Finally, someone fought back, he murmured. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The paper in my hand spoke for me, and for once the town spoke with it. This street won't forget paperwork again. The laminated Clear Lake playbook hung from the post office bulletin board, fluttering in the afternoon wind that smelled like rain and routine. Someone had thumbtacked it next to the lost cat flyer and the church bake sale notice. It looked almost ordinary until you read the heading, How to File, Right-of-Way and Color Compliance Permits. Below it were the words that changed everything compiled by the Clear Lake HOA and the City Clerk's Office 2025. The town finally had a map, one made of rules everyone could see. I stepped back to take it in. The plastic sheet rippled, catching sunlight that bounced off the glass door. For the first time in a long while, the bulletin board wasn't gossip, it was governance. Howard joined me, chewing a toothpick cap tilted back. You seeing this? I'm seeing memory, I said. Printed and laminated. He grinned. Never thought the word permit could feel like progress. A small crowd filtered in and out of the lobby, neighbors checking mail, nodding at the poster, no one rolling their eyes. Marcus and Linda had delivered on their word. The new board, quiet and unflashy, sent out monthly bulletins now. They didn't fine, they filed. Howard tapped the edge of the playbook. Vivian'd hate how plain this looks. Plain's the point, I said. It's what truth looks like after the dust settles. He nodded, eyes squinting toward the window where the reflection of Birch Street shimmered like a photograph. Town's calmer, he said. Kids play by the curb again. Streets feel open. Law made them that way, I said. He chuckled. You make it sound poetic. It's just paperwork, I said, but sometimes paperwork is poetry with proof. We stepped outside. The lake glimmered at the end of the road, a blue band behind the houses. The wind was soft, the kind that moved flags and conscience alike. At home, the foyer smelled of cedar and ink. On the wall near the entryway, 2 frames hung side by side. The first was the fine notice. Paint code 412-07, bright yellow under glass. The second was the closure order, City of Clear Lake, stamped and sealed in red. Together they looked less like artifacts and more like punctuation marks, one for the beginning, one for the end. Howard stood beside me reading both without speaking for a moment. Then he said quietly, That's history now. So is the fight, I said. He turned toward me, brow lifted. You sure about that? As sure as a stamp, I said, he laughed softly. Maybe we should frame that playbook next. Let it stay public, I said. If it ever comes down, someone will remember why it was there. Outside, I could hear the distant hum of the diner, the clink of forks, the half-laughter of normal life returning. The street had learned something about itself, that authority can look tidy and still be wrong, and that correction doesn't need to shout to last. I ran a finger along the bottom of the frames, the glass cool under my hand. Beneath them, a small brass plaque read, "Resolved by Order and Patience, 2025. Howard set his cap back on. "You keeping these up for good?" "For as long as the wall stands," I said. He opened the door and squinted at the light. "Then I guess that's your legacy." "Not mine," I said. "Ours." The screen door clicked shut behind him, and I stood in the silence that follows justice, clean, unshowy, full of space. I looked once more at the two frames, the fine that started it, the order that ended it. Each bore the same word in the corner, filed. The echo was written there in ink, quiet and permanent. They fined our house for color. The law fined their street for overreach. And Clear Lake remembered both. The brass plaque gleamed under the porch light, its edges catching the lake's reflection. Beside it, the framed fine notice and closure, order waited like twin witnesses, stamped, sealed, and calm. The town had learned that paperwork, when honest, holds the same weight as a verdict, it just speaks slower. We didn't rebuild walls. We rebuilt trust, one signed line at a time. The seal still showed proof that justice can be quiet and permanent. Finally, someone fought back. Share your HOA story below your map might help someone redraw theirs.